Okay, exploring fast software has really showed me how, I guess, tyrannical or regressive Asia is as a continent. Asia could have been leaders of the free world. With their discipline in communities and their academics, we could have really led innovation, but instead we got poor economic systems by greedy American businessmen and tyrants, and we stick to it to this day. Asia pretty much is the Night City dystopia cyberpunk represents. You can see why there's always a fear of Orientalism in these, like, Western areas. Cyberpunk, the main corporation is Arasaka. And okay, let's take drugs for example.
Stop.
This video is not about drugs, but to highlight the mentality of people, mostly in Asia, I suppose. And with drugs, due to Richard Nixon's greed for power, he demonized everything except alcohol and nicotine so he could arrest his political rivals. And the war on drugs was formed by greed, power, fear, and hatred, none of which are scientific reasons for making something illegal. And to this day, Asian countries keep this fear and hatred alive. Psychedelics and THC have many medical benefits, a lot more than alcohol, and it has been used in many cases to help survivors of sex trafficking and assault to overcome their trauma. It has shown promising results to help veterans stop reliving their PTSD, and it has even been used to overcome things like alcohol addiction. Think about that. The substance that is made illegal is actually being used to treat addiction to substances that are legal. And again, the pathology of cannabis, THC, and psilocybin and these psychedelics is far safer than alcohol in terms of harm to user, harm to others, and addiction chemistry, or psychological dependence and things like that. There's an actual scientific study done on this by David Nutt, which critically looked at the chemistry and the nature of all these drugs and found out that alcohol is literally one of the worst ones, in the same category as crack cocaine and heroin, and yet alcohol is legal.
With your feet on the air, your head on the ground.
The two legal drugs in all Asian countries are by far the worst. And okay, I suppose they did the right thing with cocaine and heroin, but alcohol is far more addictive and far more dangerous in short-term effects. Increased violence, false confidence to drive, rashness, aggression, beating loved ones. Only alcohol can make an innocent man a domestic abuser. If weed is illegal, alcohol should be illegal as well. If human lives and damage to society is the reason substances are made illegal, then alcohol and nicotine should be the first substances and the substances with the most severe penalties associated to them. And yet, Asian countries pride themselves on their brewing skills. You see, the West is now understanding the errors of their ways and trying to update drug legislation on contemporary scientific understanding. Portugal decriminalized it and saw amazing results. And like I said, there are many scientific studies that show promise that these substances can be used for many positive medical uses. And yet they are considered in the same category as no medical use at all and made illegal. Asia has completely failed to deal with the problem of addiction, and it is basically 1 century behind on all contemporary scientific understanding and education regarding these substances. We choose to live in the regressive ways. And soon, Asia will probably try to regulate the internet by banning video games, because video games are addictive too, and so is pornography. More restrictions, more hatred, more ignorance, and less education, less mental health development, and less progress. We, as a continent, could have led this research. We could have shattered the paradigm and helped millions. But instead, we as a continent chose to live with the bullshit the colonists gave us. You know, I guess Asian countries really are products of colonialism. And okay, let me get to this next topic. Female promiscuity, right? Many people will think Asia is this amazing place where women look stunning and sound amazing in bed.
And also, guys, as much as I wish it was true, not all Asian girls sound like
and are family oriented. This is an anime myth. Women in Asia prioritize education above everything else due to strict hierarchies and judgment that exists here. Asia also has declining birth rates, and okay. I'm not saying this is women's fault. I'll cover this in the economic segment later. But again, Asia has declining birth rates, and alcohol and nightclubs are extremely popular in Asia because it's profitable for alcohol companies, I guess. And alcohol distilleries were owned by white people, Richard Nixon's buddies. And so is smoking and nicotine. You see, weed and cannabis can be grown anywhere and consumed in any way. It is too freedom respecting if you understand what I mean. Think of it in the softer sense. But alcohol, on the other hand, you have to be dependent on a company. So again, what America basically did back then, another reason they made it illegal, is so they could basically make more profit. Alcohol is more of a dependency/monopoly kind of thing, while things like cannabis and mushrooms and all that can be grown anywhere. And again, Asia is not the land of beautiful, virgin, thin women. Do not listen to retarded red people online. They don't know what they're talking about. Asian culture is a myth. Asian culture is just Western culture with a side of hatred and regression. That is it. Asia has adopted the Western economic system that allowed Western corporations to get extremely powerful. Asia is like a factory that wants to produce workers, consumers, and obedient slaves. There's a reason American games depict Asian corporations as villains. Arasaka, more like Samsung. And that Oriental fear is not necessarily all propaganda. In Asia, corporations are more powerful than anything. They really are above the law. They took the education system Rockefeller came up with and pushed it to the extreme, roping women into the rat race as well, and at the same time pressurizing women to have regressive obligations. Women in Asia are really between the wall and the sword, make no mistake. Feminism is basically a swear word here, and it is an insult used to describe difficult women in Asia. People here are ruled by stress and fear, mainly. This is highlighted by the murders for basically cannabis, which took place in Asia, and the intolerance of drugs, except alcohol, because apparently it was okay in the 1970s or whatever. The education system in this continent, from a young age, forces people to focus on precision and memory, essentially getting them used to stress and performing like a cog in the machine, not thinking, not innovating, and not questioning. It stresses the youth so they become compliant workers and consumers. Instead of educating the youth about addiction, not just about drugs, but about addiction in general, pornography, video games, nicotine, alcohol. Instead of educating them, what Asia has done instead is they just demonize it, and they stayed 1 century before. Instead of questioning the economic system that leads to mass spread problems, male loneliness, suicide, mental health, obesity, Asian countries choose to make something a scapegoat. Earlier it was drugs, now it's becoming video games, and they choose to murder people for it. The next scapegoat will probably be video games, and then it will be TikTok or whatever. Until addiction is dealt with, no amount of killing for deterrence will ever work. It'll just force people to move on to the next legal thing. The probation didn't work, and neither will Asia's barbarism in tackling these modern problems. Deterrence and fear should not be the language lawmakers speak. It should be empathy, humanization, good mental health, and rehabilitation. These words are basically alien in Asian civilization, which is ruled by fear and extremely harsh judgment. Asia will never address its deep-seated issues in the way the world functions. It will continue to be regressive until we as a new generation decide to change and do something about it. Or until the West considers it to be no longer profitable, in which case the agenda will shift again. Asia is about maintaining the status quo. It is about keeping fear and control, brutal control, over its residents. Activism, feminism, free software, and any type of movement is scorned upon in Asia. In fact, I'm willing to bet these people don't even know what the word freedom really means. Try talking about free software and privacy in Asia. People look at you like they don't even understand. You will never see a Richard Stallman in Asia, or a Linus Torvalds, or a Martin Luther King. I get these people have had their problems and weird takes, but you get the point I'm trying to make here. I just wish Asian countries could have led progress. You know what I mean? Asia is becoming more and more tyrannical as I think about it. CCP China, Samsung Korea, it just gets darker and darker and darker. Instead of having mercenaries that kill each other, we have students killing themselves. Instead of having Arasaka and Militech, we have Apple and Samsung. And this is basically what Asia is. And I do hope it will change. And I understand a lot of you will think how this basically ropes into free software. And the point I'm trying to make is, like, the idea of freedom and the idea of being able to really have control over your own life is something that is not prioritized at all in Asia. Freedom is seen as a variety here, and that's not what it really is. And I do hope with videos like this and the generations becoming more open-minded and more progressive in a good way, not the degeneracy way, will allow Asia to really begin its progress and hopefully lead progress in the future. That is what I want for Asia to do. I want it to be the side of the hemisphere that did things right. Land of the rising sun. So why are we still one fucking century behind on a lot of modern policies? And okay, I'll just throw in some few nuggets to show what Asia does correctly. I think Asia has fantastic infrastructure and urban planning. But at the same time, there are many economic problems here that need to be dealt with, and we need to start changing the way we think. We need to begin thinking. And that's all I got for this video. Thanks for watching, and tell me what you think. Have a nice day.